Tampa Bay Bucs 26, New Orleans Saints 9. Bucs moved to 3-1. They're headed into their bye as the first place in the NFC South. Saints fall to 2-2. We did all of our pregame analysis talking about Jameis Winston, who came in relief and YOLO'd an interception.
Yeah.
After the game was over.
Right.
Derek Carr did get the start despite the AC joint injury. And I don't know how much the injury affected him because he didn't play that much different than he's played this year. It hasn't been great. I mean, he was worse than he was the other 3 weeks.
Well, he was bad. The question is how much of it was bad because he was dealing with an injured shoulder versus just he's Derek Carr.
Yeah. But it was a back-and-forth game. This game absolutely turned before the half. So Baker Mayfield's going to end up with a really great stat line, 25 of 32 for 246, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. The pick came just before the half. Bucs are driving. They're up 7-3. Mayfield forces one into coverage, intercepted. It looks like it's going to be 7-3 at the half. The Saints they have the ball at about the 2, run a little fullback dive, and Antoine Winfield comes in, punches the ball out, and the Bucs recover it. So what should have been a 7-3 halftime deficit for the Saints, well, the Bucs make this huge play. Baker Mayfield hits Trey Palmer with a fade. Trey Palmer becoming a contested catch genius now. So it becomes 14-3 at the half and completely changes the game, and the Bucs ended up pulling away in the second half. So that was a huge turning point in the game for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, really, they should have given the ball to their true power back, Taysom Hill. If you need a couple of yards off the goal line, you give the ball to Taysom. Let that man make some magic happen. Baker Mayfield is starting to get into this groove where, I wonder how much of his crappy play the last few years has been the dude's confidence has just been blown to hell. You think of all of Baker Mayfield's peak times playing football, and this is not just in the NFL, but dating back to college. He was clearly in that zone, right? Feeling it. The dude had confidence, right? Now maybe he was he had some impressive mental strength as a college quarterback to be a walk-on multiple different places consecutively and still have that confidence, right? That's an impressive level of self-confidence with very little reason behind it at that point in his career, and then goes on to be Heisman Trophy winner and absolute baller and all that kind of thing. And it felt like he carried that into the NFL, and that's where you got that year one rookie Baker Mayfield who still had that kind of swagger about him. And then I think that confidence got dented. The Freddie Kitchens year happened, he started playing well again, and then everything fell apart. He got injured, and then it felt like he never really recovered from that. I don't know if he was sort of broken almost by the Browns effectively pulling their support from him and then, saying, actually, Baker, thanks for all that, but we're going to go in a different direction. That must be pretty damaging as a quarterback, right? To have the team that bought into you and that you sort of fixed, the jersey with the million names, and now it's you, for them to basically go, after you gritted through the broken shoulder thing, right? For them to basically just go, yeah, you know what? Actually, we're not going to give you the money. We're going to go get this guy instead. But in addition to just playing crappy, it felt like you weren't getting the same swag, right? It wasn't Baker Mayfield. It was just this dude that isn't playing very well. Now, the first few weeks in Tampa Bay, it's been a lot of that offense having answers, right? Like we talked about with PFF Bobby and the Houston Texans, the Bucs are doing a really good job of dialing stuff up, and Baker doesn't have to go through to 2 and 3 and beyond very often. He's just hitting number one, and it's open most of the time, and in particular on third down, the answers are always there. This was the first game where I started to get the impression that Baker was starting to feel more like Baker, and in addition to those answers on third down, now we're starting to get some Baker ad-lib plays in there as well, which, remember, were a feature of early Mayfield. And then it almost became a problem that he was trying to do that too much, and they were going badly when he did. I don't know. I'm just starting to get this impression that for the very first time, Baker is sort of adding to this combination rather than just taking advantage of being in a really good, not a really good situation, but in an offense, it's actually helping him out.
Yeah, that was why every time he went good year, bad year, good year, bad year, and then we said, hey Browns, you gotta pick up, you gotta see what he has in his 5th year.
Right.
Because you don't know when it's going to come by. And then Panthers, of course, a buy low on Baker Mayfield makes sense. and the Rams. Of course, a buy low on Baker Mayfield makes sense, and it worked for like a game. So that was where we kept encouraging teams to like take the shot because you don't know. And it was 3 different teams, including the Browns, where you didn't get it out of them, and you are seeing that now. I mean, he had the first touchdown. He runs around and finds Kate Otten in the end zone. The last touchdown to seal it was the same thing, right? He's running around and finds Devin Tompkins to, for the however long the touchdown was, diving back out of the end zone. You are seeing some of those ad-lib plays. He's also scrambling with a purpose. He has a few first downs with his legs now. The other interesting thing about this game was always, we mentioned the Marshawn Lattimore-Mike Evans matchup before Mike Evans got hurt, and that's a big story because this offense had very much been Mike Evans. You got a little bit from Chris Godwin, you got a little bit from the other guys, but it was Evans as the go-to guy. And they went to him early. First pass, they go right to Evans. It was like they said, we are not letting Marshawn Lattimore get in your head this game. And Evans finished with 3 catches for 40 yards before he got hurt. That was like his best stat line against the Saints in years. But they went to Evans, and there was a defensive pass interference in there. Like Evans was getting the best of Lattimore early on.
And the defensive pass interference was Lattimore literally tackling him.
Yeah.
Like got beat off the line. Okay, it's you got beat off the line in a kind of way where if you want to look for a flag, you'd be like, well, that's obviously illegal by Mike Evans. Having said that, it's a Mike Evans-Lattimore matchup, right? That is not getting called. But what will be called is when you're beat and going face first into the turf, literally just rugby tackling the dude's ankles and be like, nah, you're not making a play. So that was the pass interference. But yeah, that's always a fun battle. And like the Baker Mayfield thing, like who knows how fragile that is? Like they're playing the Lions next, right? It could easily evaporate in one game. But I think it is significant that this Baker Mayfield combination with the offense, I think, is starting to become more valuable than it was at the start when it was essentially one partner doing the heavy lifting. By that I mean the scheme, and Baker Mayfield is taking advantage of it, just riding that wave. Now I think Baker is contributing to the success on top of what's already being manufactured by the offensive scheme. And that's where you get some real potential there because you do still have a really good set of receivers. Mike Evans with a hamstring, that's a potential problem for a while. Like this is, when we talked before in the boo-boo breakdown, hamstrings are a pain in the ass thing to have. They can linger.
We've talked about him here too on the main show.
That too. Yeah. But Chris Godwin is still really good. Trey Palmer was the next guy up. He played a ton of snaps in this offense, and okay, he only got a couple of targets, but made a nice contested play. He's a big part. Like this can be good.
Yeah, Devin Tompkins is a good player. Godwin stepped up. He made some big plays in this one for the Bucs. Couple other things to highlight. Last year, the Saints pass rush disappeared at times. It did again in this game. Credit the Bucs, pass protection. Also, Luke Goedeke. Remember last year he played guard. He was a second-round pick. He was overwhelmed at guard. He goes back to his college position, right tackle. He's been very good to start the season. Was very good in pass protection. In this one, that was the opposite of what Saints-Bucs games had looked like these last few years. So the Bucs win the battle up front against the Saints, who had really gotten the better of them the last few seasons. And then the Carr thing, I mean, he's off to a rough start grade-wise. Mm-hmm. Last year was the lowest grade he had since his rookie season. I know he's got this injury, but I don't know, man. It's not a great start for the Carr era, even though I keep waiting for this Bucs offense Saints offense to explode. We're starting to see the opposite. It's getting worse.
Yeah, Jameis coming in, going one play YOLO interception doesn't help the argument, but
that doesn't matter.
It feels like Jameis was a better option to start this game than an injured Derek Carr. And I don't think that's hindsight. I think that was reasonably obvious going into it.
Alvin Kamara made his return for the Saints as well. A couple nice runs in there, but he finishes with 13 catches for 33 yards.
It's probably time to give the Bucs credit for the Tristan Wirfs thing. They moved him from right tackle, where he'd been arguably the best right tackle in the NFL since he came into the league, really, to the left side. And he's been, if anything, better at the left side, where he played in college on the left side, right? At least the end of his career.
He flipped a few times in college, so he at least had some experience there. I thought doing it in year 3 or 4 here
it's pushing
was risky, but it's turned out great.
We're 4 games into the season now, and he's given up 2 pressures.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
He's been out of his mind. Tristan Wirfs is really, really good.
Yeah.
So Bucs head into a bye here at 3-1.
Last player to mention, Antoine Winfield had another absurd game where he had the play you mentioned, forcing the fumble. He also had a pass breakup on a Chris Olave, what was actually a well-thrown pass by Derek Carr and was going to land in the bucket.
It's a great play.
And he just goes, so Olave's there, 2 hands under the ball, ready, giving it the bucket to drop into, and Winfield at like full extension just gets his arm right between those 2 arms and breaks it up. I mean, those are 2 massive high leverage plays in this game that if they go the other way, or if Winfield isn't there, that swings the win percentage back in New Orleans' favor a massive degree.